There we go. There we go. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Hope you're doing well. Happy Monday. We're rolling through July. So good to be with you. Jumping on just a couple minutes here for another Monday. We've been doing this over the last several months, the last couple months, just kind of taking some time on Monday to reset, take an opportunity to jump in together, pass along some things that we're talking about, some things we're thinking about, some resources, some tools, some frameworks. Man, it's been really fun to be a part of doing this. So we're going to continue to move forward for the next several weeks. We're mapping out the conversations here in August. We'll take a little bit of a break in September, just with some travel that we have on the books, make sure that we create a little bit of space for that, and then we'll continue to jump in with this. So what I'm going to do today is we've been on this theme over the last couple of weeks, just talking about margin, right? So we're in vacation mode, we're in summer mode, we're running a cohort right now with a bunch of different leaders. And even as we were talking last week, I was asking them how's summer going, what's going on? And they're like, okay, we're ready for ministry to start again, right? We're ready to kind of ramp back up. We've got the welcome week planned. We've got ministry mapped out. We've got our all of our events on the calendar, and so we're ready to roll, right? So sometimes I think in this season, the tension can be for us is that we can feel that margin, and then there's like this thought in the back of our mind of like, okay, should I be doing more? Because for some of us, if we're honest, margin is that thing that we push down the road, right? We kind of kick it down, saying eventually after the sermon's done, after the budget is finalized, after I finish welcome week, after this season calms down. But here's the reminder for us today is that leaders with no margin don't lead very well. And so we've been talking about this. In fact, we're actually doing a full training on this next week. So make sure that you're watching for that. It's an opportunity just to ask the question, like, how do we best utilize this margin, right? How do we best utilize this season? And then even as we head into busy seasons, are we doing it in a healthy way? Because the reminder for us, and I've seen this over and over again, both in leaders that we've worked with, I've seen it in myself and my own leadership, that when I don't have the appropriate space in my life, when I don't have the appropriate margin in my life, I'm always in constant reaction mode, right? I'm just always like kind of moving from this thing to the next thing. And I'm always just like reacting, trying to catch up in life, in ministry, and everything that's going on. And so what I want to kind of like talk about today is just remind us that when we talk about margin, that this isn't like a time management tip, right? This is not a hack. It's not about getting our calendars better, figuring out the right new app to utilize. Like, really, the question comes down is, how do we steward our capacity in a healthy way and allow that to become a template, right? To actually become the norm of our ministry, the norm of our rhythms, so that we are functioning in a healthy way. And like we talked about last week, is that the people that are watching us are seeing what it looks like to do ministry in a healthy way as well. And so whether we mean it or not, right? So we recognize that we're discipling people around us, we're influencing people around us. And so this is when we talk about this idea of margin, this is not to like hack your way into like doing something better, right? It's about how do you create healthy rhythms in your ministry, healthy rhythms in your leadership, so that one is you're becoming a more effective leader, but you're also influencing those people around you. So what I want to do today is I want to remind us, there's a framework that I've been thinking about over the last several weeks as we've been talking about this idea of margin. I've been beginning to put some things together for a week from Thursday when we spend some time together for a whole hour long as we talk about this. And I want to remind us of really kind of three concepts and three reminders for us in ministry when we think about margin. Number one is we need to think about margin as modeling. And this is what I talked about a few minutes ago, that what you model, the rhythms that you create, the ways in which you structure your week, your months, your day, your team is going to mirror that. Your students are going to mirror that. So if you're running constantly on E, running off 110% with no room to breathe, I want to just give you some freedom and give you permission that is not a healthy way to function. That when we have healthy margin in our leadership, that we are modeling that to other people. And so in the season, right, where you feel the tension of like, should I be doing more? Should I be spending longer at the office? Like these questions, be reminded today that you are modeling for your leaders, you're modeling for your students, you're modeling for your young adults what it looks like to live and lead in a healthy way. And so we need to remember that margin is modeling. Okay, secondly, when we think about in this framework, we need to be reminded that margin is actually multiplication. That margin is actually multiplication. I told this story last week, but I want to loop back around it again. A couple weeks ago, we two Mondays ago now, we were doing a leader community here in Austin. One of our best leaders, who's from Oklahoma, was just like he doing some reflection, and he was sharing just about like some of the things that he was reflecting. We gave some reflection time, and he was talking about that creating space for reflection, creating space for journaling, creating space for thinking. I mentioned this last week. There's a really great book called Thinking Time that actually creates the momentum in our ministry. And here's what I want you to hear from somebody who's been doing this I've been full-time ministry now for 29 years, right? The reminder that when you are leading in a healthy way, that margin is actually multiplication of your impact. It's multiplication of your ministry. It's multiplication of your effectiveness. And I've seen this over and over again in my own life. And for some reason, I kind of keep like defaulting back to like, if I push harder, that's actually what is going to help me become a more effective leader. And what I've seen over and over again, and what I need to be reminded of over and over again, is that actually what makes me an effective leader is not pushing harder, but creating the space to think, to process, to make decisions. And when you create capacity, you actually protect compounding. Like you're actually creating space for better decisions, more patience with people, for capacity to have the space that it needs to respond in emergencies, to think about vision. That when you create margin, that you're actually multiplying the effectiveness and the fruitfulness of your ministry. Now, it seems counterproductive for us, right? We actually think that creating more boundaries would make us less effective. But what I've seen over and over again, both personally, studies have shown this too. Like when we're on E all the time, we're actually our decisions degrade, our effectiveness degrades. And so when we create margin in our life, we create multiplication and impact. Okay, so margin, we need to think about it as multiplication. The third one, margin as ministry. Margin as ministry. Your ministry's pace is always downstream of yours, right? So if you have no room, no one under you has room either. Like that, I've seen it 100 times over and over again. When you create no space, people are modeling that, and that's what your ministry is going to reflect your pace. And margin isn't just a protection from burnout. It's what actually makes you available to respond when God moves. Think about this. When we have margin in our lives, it gives us the space to be responsive to those moments where sometimes real ministry actually happens. So if you have no room, you can't be responsive, right? So we're not making ourselves available to being responsive to when God moves. So when we have a fully booked out calendar and we're fully booked out leaders, we can't recognize those moments. And we'll just call them like divine moments or prompting or an unplanned conversation. Like, it's amazing to me how many people will come back to me 5, 10, 15 years later and will share a moment in ministry that was not a program. It wasn't a scheduled thing. It was often the space in between. It was that moment that I was able to step into a conversation. I was able to stop and to pause, invite them over for dinner. I was able to hey, let's go grab lunch or coffee together. Hey, why don't you come into my office? Like those moments of those divine moments of prompting in the unplanned that creates some of the best ministry. And margin is that space that lets you be responsive to what God is doing in real time, not just what's happening on your calendar. So for this framework, number one, margin as modeling, that we are modeling margin to the people around us. We're to our leaders, to our students, to our family, to our kids, right? That margin as modeling. But secondly, is margin is multiplication. That we actually will be better leaders, make decisions in a better way when we have the space to not be on E all the time. And thirdly, as margin as ministry, those moments to be responsive. One of these, I was thinking about like just a story where there was a season in my life where it was probably one of the most busy seasons of my life. We had just had Macy, who is our third. So Brooke and Abby, my twins, were 2 years old. Macy was a newborn. I was leading 3 ministries at the church, actually 4 ministries at the church. I was leading the middle school ministry, the high school ministry, the college ministry, and then I was leading a Sunday night service. And I remember that season of just like being booked from basically from morning to night. My calendar was so like where if something went over, it just like set the rest of the day off. I don't know if you've ever had those moments. And there was a time where I had to take a meeting. It was actually a dinner meeting, and because I didn't have any other time in my calendar. And so took this dinner meeting. It was with a couple of our college leaders. So sit down, we're at a restaurant, BJ's. And so we're sitting down, and I remember kind of this interaction with this waitress who began to kind of like hover and hang out in our meeting time. And what became obvious in the conversation was that she was in need, right? So she's beginning to share, she had a hard time with her boyfriend she was living with, and struggles with finances and job and like all these other things that she was doing. And I remember being so frustrated, right? Because I had my agenda that I had to go into. I had these conversation points. And I remember sitting there being so frustrated that this young gal was interrupting my space, my time, my meeting, right? And I remember like just being frustrated and leaving that meeting super frustrated because it took longer and I wanted to get home. And I still remember like driving towards home. I still remember the moment I was at where the Lord convicted me pretty hard, right? And I missed it. I missed the opportunity. I missed the moment because I didn't have the margin in my life. So I was modeling something that was not good for these two leaders. My ministry was significantly suffering in that season, and I didn't have the space in that moment to respond to what the Lord was doing in this conversation. And so here's the reminder for us as we kind of wind down this conversation is the cost for us as leaders is not burnout, right? That's what they'll tell you. They'll tell you that the cost is burnout. If you're going on E, you're going 110% all the time, the cost of burnout. Well, that may be one of the costs, but that's not the real cost, right? That there's the cost is actually missing what God is doing because we don't leave room to notice where he's moving. So here's what I would encourage you this week to do. Okay. So here's your homework for this week is I would love for you to take just a little bit of time and to do some reflection. And to think about what are some ways that you need to create margin in your life. So here's what I would say. Here's the big question that I want to leave with you. What would you have to say no to this month to actually protect your margin? So we got a couple more weeks left in July. You know, if you're watching this live, we're coming up to the 15th here, about halfway through. What do you have to do this month to actually protect your margin? And here's what I would say, and not feel guilty about it, right? To be okay with the space that you've created and to reflect and say, what decisions do I need to make? How do I allow my calendar to reflect my priorities versus just urgency? And so I would love for you this week to sit with that question. How do we, as healthy leaders, protect that margin? What decisions do we actually need to make? Just as a reminder, if you are watching this, I think before the 22nd of July, we're going to be having a conversation, doing some longer training on kind of healthy rhythms and boundaries and practices that we can put together in our ministry. So if you're on an email list or you hang out with us on social media, you'll see that conversation. I'd love for you to join us on the 22nd. If not, looking forward to next week as we jump in together. As usual, we'll record. This will be in the resources in our Circle community. You can always watch any of the replays if you miss them. So love you guys. Keep us posted if you need something. Look forward to chatting with you at some point down the road. Okay, we'll see you later.